event had occurred. But the grand jurors did reach a decision this afternoon, and I'm here to generally outline what they did decide. But before I do that, what I want to do is to have you guys give you guys a little bit of an understanding of what the grand jurors, the evidence that they received, and generally what the process was. We all know that the Monday after James Scurlock was shot and killed, that there was a press conference from this room, and the press conference conducted by Don Klein and Brenda Beadle indicated that there wouldn't be charges forthcoming because there was a determination that the action by Jake Gardner was self-defense. Well, the Omaha Police Department continued with its investigation. And Don Klein told you all that that was a decision that he was making at that particular point, but that because the investigation was continuing, that there was the opportunity for there to be some change with respect to that decision making. Within a few days, there became a request for a grand jury to do the investigation, and I was approached and asked if I was willing to serve as a special prosecutor. And after some deliberation and some consultation, I agreed to do it. Now, the reason why I'm giving you that background is because the Omaha Police Department did continue with their investigation. And I can tell you that they interviewed approximately 60 people in conjunction with this homicide investigation. They received video clips from members of the public who were down in the old market. And ultimately, all of that information was passed on to me and to the team that I assembled, to very experienced retired Omaha police officers. So we reviewed that information, and we followed up and did some additional interviews. And I can tell you that the grand jury, at the point in time that they made their decision, it's almost a slam dunk that they had much more information available to them than what was had at the time that the initial decision was made. The grand jury returned an indictment today against Jake Gardner. And that indictment charges the following counts. The first count charges manslaughter in connection with the death of James Scurlock. The second charge, or the second count, charges the use of a firearm in the commission of a felony. The third count that they decided to charge was attempted first-degree assault. And the fourth charge or count is terroristic threats. Now, going from the last count forward, I can't talk about the evidence. I'm ethically, you all know, prohibited from discussing that. But what I can tell you, I do want you and the public to have some understanding of what those particular counts connect with as it relates to what's understood out there about what ended up happening on May 30th of 2020 down in the old market. The terroristic threat count essentially addresses the conduct of Jake Gardner in the verbal confrontation with James Scurlock at a point where a firearm was brandished and ultimately displayed. It includes the commentary, the back and forth between the two of them. But I don't get to participate in the deliberations with the grand jury, but they are able to understand that Jake Gardner was threatening the use of deadly force in the absence of being threatened with a concomitant deadly force by James Scurlock or anyone who was associated with him. The count that is the attempted first-degree assault is tied to the shot that that has been characterized as a warning shot. Now, there are two shots before the shot that ultimately took the life of James Scurlock. It's that second shot that the grand jurors decided to charge attempted first-degree assault. And lastly, the manslaughter count and the use of a firearm, actually the use of the firearm in connection with a felony is attendant to all of the three substantive counts. But with respect to the manslaughter count, we all know that Nebraska law contemplates a charge like that when a person is killed unintentionally. I misstated that. Is a person is killed intentionally, but as a result of a sudden quarrel, and that's a general description of the law attendant to manslaughter. What I can tell you about that is that particular count does not rest solely on an analysis of the video that has been played in the media already. There was evidence that was gathered and presented to the grand jury about activity that Jake Gardner was engaged in prior to even coming in contact with James Scurlock. And that evidence can reasonably construed as an intent to use a firearm for purposes of killing someone. And you all want to know what it is, and I can't tell you about it. But what I can tell you is that that evidence comes primarily from Jake Gardner himself. The grand jury was able to have information from his cell phone, from his Facebook Messenger account. They were able to review video from inside Mr. Gardner's business. And they were able to get evidence relative to Mr. Gardner's state of mind as a part of what was presented to them from this investigation. So that is what they decided. And I told those grand jurors when I first was appointed to work this case that when I was appointed that I expected to ultimately end up at the conclusion of their decision making to stand in front of the press and say the same thing that Don Klein said, which was that the shooting was justifiable self-defense. That was my initial reaction. But I can tell you that there is evidence that undermines that. And again, that evidence comes primarily from Jake Gardner himself. So that is pretty much what I want to say about the grand jury, the indictment. I do want to say this, though. The Omaha Police Department and Chief Smatter, they were tremendous in helping me and my team in terms of answering questions with respect to evidence that they had gathered, with respect to any assistance or any cooperation we sought from them, because they actually obviously took the lead on the investigation and had to bring me and my team up to speed on it. They did a great service to us, and I want to publicly thank the Omaha Police Department, Chief Smatter, and the Homicide Unit for their involvement and their assistance and support of the Office of the Special Prosecutor in connection with the shooting of James Scurlock. And I also want to say about Don Klein and Brenda Beadle. Those are two people who I have known for probably 25 years. And I know those two people to be people of the highest integrity, And there is nothing about what this grand jury has done that should be taken as some sort of a knock or an indictment against Don Klein or Brenda Beadle or the Douglas County Attorney's Office. They're excellent people, they're lawyers and prosecutors of integrity, and they were also of tremendous assistance to me and my team in terms of bringing this matter to the grand jury. I think the last thing that I want to say is to the family and friends and allies of James Scurlock, that this is not a time for celebration or exuberance. These are simply charges. Jake Gardner is a man presumed innocent as I stand here before you right now. What the grand jury did, they understood that they had a lower, lesser burden than what happens when a person goes to trial, because there were questions about that. And I'm confident that that impacted how they approached this. But having said that, though, as I've indicated to you, I believe that there is competent, credible evidence to support the decision that they in fact did make. I think the last thing I want to say is to the Omaha community, and I've been alerted to the fact that there were folks just waiting for an outcome that would reignite a bunch of riotous behavior and vandalism. And as a person who spends a significant amount of time in the downtown and in the Old Market area, it saddens me to see people have to walk around with those kinds of concerns, with businesses having to be boarded up. For the people who are supportive of James Scurlock, his father stated right after he was killed that he did not condone and did not want that type of behavior. When his son was killed in the Old Market, there was a protest because of injustice relative to the killing of George Floyd. And the George Floyd family said the exact same thing. And I just want to echo that engaging in vandalism and the destruction of property, when people engage in that sort of behavior, you are dishonoring the memory of the people who have died. and I don't want to say more importantly, but it almost is more importantly, you are playing right into the hands of the people who are against what it is you are protesting for, because you end up allowing those people to have other folks tell them, see, this is the reason why we need to have heavy-handed this, that, or the other. Folks, y'all getting played when you engage in that behavior, and I'm going to respectfully state to folks that are allies to justice movements that protests and demonstrations absolutely have a place. They should be part of the toolbox. But they shouldn't be the only tool in the toolbox. You know, there are other things like economic boycotts, like registering and voting, like uniting behind a particular business, or other things that people can do in the name of generating the justice that they want to see happen, rather than just simply destroying stuff. I'm suggesting to you folks that now is not the time for that. The Scurlock family and their attorney, Justin Wayne, wanted to have this grand jury take place as a process, and that process has taken place, and we'll go on to the next step. I believe I know who Jake Gardner's attorney is, and I intend to reach out to him after I finished here to let him know, so that Mr. Gardner we can be alerted as to whether or not he wants to turn himself in, or if he wants to be the object of the execution of an arrest warrant. As it stands now, again, the indictment has just been filed, and so there's not been a date, to my knowledge, that's been set for an initial appearance on the charges. I'm sure you guys will probably get that figured out before I even know. But having said that, I don't think that there's anything else that I want to address with you. I appreciate you guys' patience in waiting on me to get the word that I needed to have before I could address you. And with that, I am finished. I don't know that I've actually done a count on that. I do know what time they received the case today, and I don't know what's productive about disclosing that, and so I'm not going to. But I can tell you that they spent more time deliberating on it than what I anticipated. Thank you. I'm not at liberty to disclose that, Tom. Well, the statute requires that 16 members are what the grand jury is comprised of. So yes, Michelle, that is accurate. There were 16 grand jury members and some alternates.
You will continue as the special prosecutor in the case, correct?
That's my expectation.
Mr. Rankin, you said that there was evidence that came from Jay Gardner himself that led to some of the charges. Some might read between the lines there that the grand jury thought that Jay Gardner was a racist. You would certainly lie on that?
Well, your question presumes that there would have been racist comments on Jay Gardner's phone. And I'm not commenting on that, but I can assure you that I can assure you that it would have been contrary to what I consider to be justice for Jake Gardner to be indicted because the grand jurors believed him to have been a racist, because being a racist is not against the law. He's He's not indicted because he may or may not be a racist. I'm confident that the grand jury looked at evidence relative to the homicide statutes, the terroristic threat statute, and the first-degree assault statute, and determined that that is the evidence that they had that implicated those particular statutes. And I mean, since you asked that question, I just want to make folks very, very clear about who I am and how I operate. I accepted this responsibility not to advance any organization's agenda, not to advance the agenda of black people because I'm African American, not to rubber stamp what Don Klein's office had decided to do. When I accepted the responsibility, it was with the understanding that I took an oath to be impartial in terms of gathering the evidence and then presenting it to the grand jury in a manner that allowed them to make decisions as to whether or not those facts implicated certain sections of the Nebraska Criminal Code. And if I were to do anything other than that, then I don't know that I could look at myself in the mirror. But I wasn't there to advance any person or any organization's agenda. I tried to be as objective and as just as I possibly could. And there's been discussion about whether Jake Gardner is a racist, and I'm not commenting on whether or not that evidence was presented to the grand jury, but I can assure you that to the extent that they received any such information, they would have completely understood from me that it would have been improper to indict someone because they are perceived by the grand jury to be a racist.
Was Jake Gardner cooperative in the investigation?
I'm not commenting on that.
Mr. Franklin, you said your initial reaction was that the shooting was justifiable in self-defense, your initial reaction?
Yes, before I was brought on as special prosecutor, when I saw the news conference, I said to myself, this is probably justifiable self-defense.
So now that you've seen this more evidence, this slam dunk of evidence, what is your reaction as a prosecutor seeing this now?
Well, I never said that it was a slam dunk of evidence, but what I did say is that there was significant evidence that was consistent with there being an intentional killing by Jake Gardner, and that evidence comes primarily from him, is what I said, and I'm not really sure what it is. I mean, as a prosecutor, I think that the grand jury received that information and included it in its deliberations, and its ultimate decision is how I would answer that.
More specifically to the question of cooperation with Mr. Gardner, did he testify before the grand jury?
I'm prohibited from disclosing the names of anyone who testified before the grand jury.
Mr. Franklin, you spoke earlier about the caliber of expertise of folks at the county attorney's office leading up to the initial stages of this investigation. Have you spoken to Don or Brenda since the decision today?
No, you guys were in first place on that in terms of me speaking to someone. I haven't spoken to anyone other than the custodians at the back of the room, and my speaking to them did not include what I told you about the outcome of the grand jury's decision-making. So, no, I haven't spoken to anyone.
This is a direct file district court, if I'm understanding correctly. So is there a preliminary hearing involved after the extradition process? You know?
Well, when a grand jury is convened and they do an indictment, that serves as the probable cause hearing that typically accompanies when the county attorney files a charge and that defendant is entitled to a preliminary hearing. So to answer your question, no, Jay Gardner will not be entitled to a preliminary hearing at this point. Well, I mean, I'm sure there will be pretrial, this, that, and the other, but there won't be a preliminary hearing. If I knew where Jay Gardner was, I don't think I'd tell you. Listen, folks, thank you for your time and patience.